All right. So Hutch and Pisco had a conversation discussing the dynamics of how they should treat the far left in the political landscape from Democrats' perspective. I wanted to react to this because I am very interested in this conversation in particular. They've been battling it out for a while. And I do think there's a very important conversation in addressing the best way to kind of uh, the best way to work together in fighting against the Trump fascist government. So let's look at it. I'm probably going to align with Hutch more, but I'll try to be as objective as possible.
To his palatial condo, he held the door. He's like, Josiah, you and your wife are free to continue to hang out with me as he's ushering us towards the door. I remember that. That's cool.
I would prefer if you stay. I would love to have you because I know that you have a view on it, but I'm offering that to you. I don't know if you want the heat of
I actively prefer that as well.
Listen, I prefer sincere invitations. I might hang around. I didn't know. Accept the pity invitation.
I didn't even know you were going to be here. So that's the only reason I'm saying that. And
also the only reason you showed up is because you knew you didn't think I was going to be here. Is this where?
I was
you, man.
overjoyed. I was overjoyed. We love it. We love it. Just stay chill.
The most offensive thing, Hutch, that Pisco did to me is again when he closed the door in the face of my wife and I onto his palatial condo, and then for him to not only lock the door but to hear the bolt slide and everything,
it's like Southerners,
fucking
man, with their guns.
The minds of Moria.
Because I know you love your guns. Okay, should we start?
You give off a vibe.
Wait here.
Wait, hold on, Josiah. What guns? Do you have a gun, Josiah?
No, I don't.
No, it's
okay.
Yeah.
I'm getting better. Better. It's fucking cool,
dude. You got fucking your piece.
Have you been shooting?
I got a new 9mm.
You got a second gun?
Yeah. The first one is a gift from my dad. That one's just kind of a meme hand cannon, but I wanted a gun for self-defense, and I'm fucking getting better, and it's cool. But anyways, yeah, go ahead. It's fucking hard to shoot a bullet straight. It's fucking really hard, even just 5 feet in front of you. You do like when you pull the trigger, your hand kind of jerks, and just like a slightest movement makes you like 2 feet off your target. And so just like the smallest things, like pulling the trigger without moving the rest of your hand, is so much harder than you fucking would think it is. And
where you truly elevate to like a master marksman is, have you ever watched that documentary with James McAvoy and Angelina Jolie? It's called Wanted, and you can teach you how to curve the bullet. Yeah,
that's what
they wanted to do a sequel, but
that's what they think Alex Preddy was doing. Around getting.
Oh my God,
true. Yeah.
Are you sick and tired of debating that shit yet? Because I didn't get a chance to watch it, but I heard like you had a fucking marathon last night.
You barely even debated it. I mean, the guys were so low IQ. I forget what they said. Oh, so at one point they were trying to argue that it was reasonable for the officers to think that Preddy had a second gun, and their argument, and I'm not even, people can fact check me if you want in the chats if you watched it, his argument was to tomfoolery. He was like, wait, why do you think that it's likely that he would have a second gun? And the guy says the following: well, in order to have a second gun, you'd have a first gun. That was his argument about why it was likely that he had a second gun, is because logically,
I was looking at a clip,
and he had a first gun. Therefore, it's likely that. So that was the caliber.
I'm telling you, that's been caliber.
Wait, while you guys are talking real quick, I'm just going to deafen for literally a minute and just get to some super chats and then come right back. 1 second.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk shit while he's going.
Yeah, dude. What do you think of
all right,
so what was the interviews that you wanted to watch? It's the one with BTC. And
Brian Tyler Cohen, and then I did one with Mike Nellis about a week ago.
Okay, we'll watch those. What do you what's your preliminary before Hutch goes back? I think I probably know it, but do you think like I do that this whole like who's in the coalition, who's not in the coalition is like a very like ill-defined, vague concept that the people who are like critiquing the more quote unquote proximate allies that you and I recognize seems vague, like what they want.
I mean, for me, it's just as long as you prefer Democrats to Republicans, then that's it. I mean, like, I know Kyle Kulinski dropped the ball in 2016. I know he did in 2020, and I think he started to show promise pre-Gaza. He had that viral debate he and Crystal did with Breonna Joy Gray, and then Gaza happened, and I guess it blackpilled him on Kamala and Biden. But it was, recent commitments that he made and like recent coverage where he's like, I'm in a different place now and I'll vote for fucking Joe Manchin over what, as long as that's the case, then, I can fuck with Kyle. It doesn't, matter so much what you did in the past. Now, if Kyle reverts course, and as the election gets closer, it's, it better be President AOC as the Democratic nominee, or I'm not voting Democrat, then that'd be a bridge breaking moment between Kyle and I. I wouldn't hate him personally, but I could no longer in good conscience support him as a political commentator. It's the same thing with the Vanguard. I like the guys at the Vanguard. I don't co-sign everything they say, but for me, it's like, I've got a pretty high threshold for who I'm willing to fuck with. And it's just based on, do you prefer the Democrats to the Republicans? And quite frankly, like that's part of the reason why, I'll be totally honest. Like, I didn't know much about Hasan a year ago, but the more I've gotten to understand about him, like that he didn't come out and endorse Kamala or even say that Kamala was preferable. And then I hear like Ogre Boy and other people defend his coverage. Like, and quite frankly, that's where I hear a lot of it is from his secondhand defenders about how, okay, sure, he never said that Kamala was.
Yeah. So the question is, how do we deal with the people on the left that are like very toxic to the Democrats coalition and arguably not helping the fight against fascism? It's like, who do we work together with? Who do we not? That's the big conversation.
Better, but he hinted at it in so many ways by talking about how bad Trump is. I couldn't fuck with Hasan. I think it was a mistake to invite Hasan to the Crooked Con, the big Pod Save America convention or whatever. I don't mind. He was there. He was a guest. He did a really good panel with Tim Miller and Jessica Tarlov and some others as well. But to me, it's like, I don't care if you're moderate or progressive or socialist or whatever. Like I'm at this point, policy is secondary to me to accountability and institutional reform, so we can set the stage for the sort of policy we prefer. My red line is, do you make it clear that the Democrats are better than the Republicans? And if you don't make that clear, if you don't state that preference, then I can't fuck with you.
Well, I'm surprised to hear you say that. I thought you were going to say he shouldn't have been invited to the DNC in the context of 2024. But you think he shouldn't have been invited to the crooked media thing? Why?
Well, I can't remember where. I can't remember. I don't know what Hasan's position was when he was invited at the time of the DNC. I don't know what his stated position was where he was on Kamala versus Trump. Because I think at the time of the DNC, correct me if I'm wrong, was that when she was still in her more populist rhetoric arc than
he was withholding an endorsement
at the time.
Yes.
Yeah. At the time. I don't know. I think that's a calculation. Yeah, I think at that point, I think that once the election came, let me put it like this: I think if they were trying to get him to the DNC to coax him into making an endorsement, that's fair. But after 2024, that he didn't make an endorsement, I would not invite him to the next DNC unless he is prepared to make an endorsement.
And what about
that's how I look at it? To me, the red line is again the preference for Democrats over Republicans. I don't care if you're the Vanguard, Kyle.
And that's because you don't consider him a journalist, because you wouldn't say that about journalists and.
No, he's not a journalist. He's a political. I'm not a journalist. Like it pisses me off. I appreciate it when my commenters are like, "Oh, that's great journalism." I'm like, "Sir, I'm not a journalist. I rely on journalists to give my political opinion."
Got it. And
like I don't mind that sort of outreach, but like the Crooked Con thing, because he already had an interview. Well, it's just again like they never came out and explicitly said this. At least not in so many words, but the whole point of Crooked Con was to boost, the lib-left coalition, and as with Democrats being their political proxies. And I'm just not sure that applies to Hasan. Again, I'm not saying cut him out entirely. I'm not saying never make overtures, but when you reach out your hand so many times and it gets slapped away, at some point you just got to withdraw the hand and focus on other parts of the coalition.
Okay, we have
that's my stance.
Let's calibrate stuff.
You're cutting out a little bit sometimes.
Oh, so, can you hear me better now?
Pisco.
Pisco, it's just every once in a while you kind of cut out.
Maybe because I'm not talking
closer to the mic.
Yeah, I'll get close to the mic right here. So I understand that we'll probably get into this sort of issue, these sort
of crying and pronouns for more than nobody's talking about pronouns. Stop being a little bitch. Rap music ruined mankind. The fuck
issues. But I want to give Hutch the floor to structure the conversation the way you want. And what is it that you want to chat about?
I think it's pretty simple. Like just piggybacking off of the tail end of what I caught from Josiah there. I think my red line in terms of identifying who is a true coalition partner / ally to the cause would be that the person is committed to voting for Democrats in the general election or independents that caucus with Democrats, obviously. That's my red line in the general. So if somebody is using the Hasan strat, for example, of not endorsing in a general to try to extract concessions, I view that kind of electoral strategy as, I don't know if I can say this on YouTube without getting demonetized, but it's like a unaliving pact, a self-unaliving pact, to use that kind of strategy. You can do that in the primary. You can do that in the primary. You can be fucking kind of ruthless in the primary up to, I think, reasonable standards. Like, for example, maybe don't spread lies that Josh Shapiro covered up a fucking murder. I feel like that is very destructive kind of primary. But you can be pretty combative and adversarial in a primary. But this strategy that lefties have, a lot of lefties have of potentially signaling, you know what, I might help Republicans win this election if I don't give this concession. That person is not a coalition partner. They're not an ally to Hasan specifically. He was just interviewed by, I don't know, some guy. He was interviewing some guy a couple days ago, and the guy asked him, who are you going to tell your audience to vote for Democrats? And Hasan said, well, I have my people that I'm going to tell them to vote for. That's not a coalition partner. His only concern is transforming the Democratic Party to be more leftist, more socialisty, more kind of moving in his direction. That is his top of his Maslow's hierarchy of political needs. His is like transforming the Democratic Party into basically a socialist structure.
Yeah,
he puts that above beating Republicans. I put beating Republicans above everything else. And so to that extent, I don't think me and him are on the same team.
Yeah, I want to eventually get into like what it means to be on the same team and what it follows from it. But I'm just taking what I heard. I heard your test for who's a member of the coalition and who's a coalition partner. I heard it. And I want to ask you, therefore, on that test, Joe Manchin is not a coalition partner.
Sorry, explain. What do you mean?
Joe Manchin did not endorse Kamala Harris, refused to endorse Kamala Harris in 2024.
Is that true? Then yeah, he was not a coalition partner in 2024.
And why are you trying to say we need more Joe Manchins?
Joe Manchin, the senator, at the time that I talk about him, was probably the most valuable Democrat that we had in the entire Senate.
Yeah, but
you
you
can't
want
speak
more
to
of
Joe
them.
Manchin's attitude in 2024. When I say I want more Joe Manchins, I mean I want more Democrats that can win in ruby red districts and states. That's what I mean.
So you're willing to work
Just
with
to
people
clarify-
who are not part of your coalition and even elect them.
Just to clarify, I just want to confirm,
Well-
because I'd forgotten about this, but he's right, because she said she was willing to get rid of the filibuster, so he refused to endorse. So
Yeah, he was not
in late
he was not a
late
coalition
September.
partner. And
Yeah, but
in that
if
moment, he
not-
was not a coalition partner.
if not being a coalition partner isn't enough to get you to even pine for them to participate in elections and for Democrats to vote for them and to have more types of those people in certain situations where it makes it helpful, I just don't understand then what is meant. Like, why is it important that you're part of the coalition or not? If you will even think that we should have more non-coalition members as part of the Democratic Party.
I guess I'm separating a coalition of like voters and a coalition like a coalition that includes both the voters and the politicians, because
YouTube Dane Calloway and find out why Harriet Tubman never existed. I'm good. I'm not doing that shit.
guys, if it came out that Hunter Biden was caught on camera sacrificing children and sucking up their adrenochrome, we just knew that 1,000%. But he ran in Nebraska and was competitive, I would vote for him, and I would encourage my viewers to vote for him as well.
But it's not like, but it's not like that, Hutch, because and I'm trying to.
Hutch, stop saying that shit. People are gonna think Democrats are crazy every time you say that shit. No, stop doing that. Stop creating these hypotheticals that give MAGA clickbait. Like, stop doing that. No, you're not voting for someone who eats children. Fuck no, you're not doing that. Stop saying that. Jesus, I hate when he does that shit. I get his point, but like, come on, bro.
Respectful. Like, it's not like, hold my nose, I'll vote for Hasan versus Donald Trump and these like ridiculous hypotheticals that we construct. It's like part of your view is we need to have more types like Joe Manchin and actively encourage them to get involved in these different places. And so it's part of your view is to push for people who essentially would not be quote unquote coalition partners to be active members of the Democratic Party. And I'm sure if Manchin were running again, you would interview him, you would advocate strenuously that people vote for him, you wouldn't treat him.
This is an interesting opportunity for Hutch to keep consistency. I didn't know about the thing about Joe Manchin either in terms of not endorsing Kamala Harris, but you can't be antithetical to appealing towards the lefties if you can't keep the same energy from like center left people who do not believe in the same cause to do whatever it takes to fight against the fascist regime that is MAGA. You do have to keep a level of consistency. I do think he can, because whatever his articulation on the value of Joe Manchin was is different from an endorsement determined in 2024. So his opinion and his analysis of him is based off things that he's done actionably from 2020 to 2023 or 2021 to 2023, something like that. So we'll see. I'll let Hutch determine how he wants to argue this.
The way that you treat Hasan.
No, I think I would push him on. You didn't endorse Kamala. What's that all about? I'm certain I would push him in that respect. But if Joe Manchin himself announced a candidacy in West Virginia and it looked like he could win in that race, I would endorse him even after this non-endorsement.
Even though he's not a coalition partner, you would say
Mamdani.
that people should vote for him. Yeah, and the same thing with Mamdani.
Mamdani.
Yeah, but I also think, to be fair, he said this, and I want to repeat it. It's different from the commentators that can influence voters versus the candidates that are battling against the fascist regime. We're not picking and choosing between the commentators. We are picking and choosing between political figures. The comparison is not analogous. So I don't think this was a good argument. And honestly, Pisco's super inconsistent with his takes because he's super aggressive with the Dems that are not doing things he likes, but he's more sympathetic to people like Drew Pavloy and fucking Kyle Kulinski. So in terms of consistency on how you deal with political figures versus political commentators, you are not consistent either. So this doesn't really make a lot of sense. All right, I'm going to continue this.
Donnie in New York City didn't endorse Kamala Harris. I still encourage people to vote for him. And
what is the teeth of this coalition partner thing? Yeah, what's the teeth of the coalition partner?
I'm applying different standards to like the politicians themselves and the voters. Like I'm separating the two things. So because my highest order principle or my like guiding foundational kind of principle is the idea that we have to beat Republicans in elections by any means necessary.
And you're holding politicians to a lower standard.
Yeah,
then
I am. Yeah. If it means like expanding majorities and making it more difficult for Republicans to win future majorities, then yes. Yeah.
But what if someone assesses that streaming with Hasan increases the chance of Democratic majorities because you're able to convince a more part of like?
I would endorse that. I would endorse them going on Hasan's stream, even though he's a tanky.
And I should say as a point of clarification, because I guess I understand where there's seeming dissonance there, at least superficially. It's hard to imagine endorsing or supporting somebody who wouldn't endorse or support the Democratic candidate unless he was meaningfully better than the Republican alternative. So that's what you mean. Like your even now your support for Manchin depends on him still being an ally to the Democratic Party if he were running for office, right? If electing Joe Manchin, for example, if he was just going to caucus with the Republicans this time as an independent, then you probably wouldn't waste your time.
Correct.
Yeah, no, I understand all that. I'm not saying that it would be irrational for Hutch to behave that way or even to argue like, fuck, we're going to need more conservative Democrats in given places. I'm not saying that I even disagree with that. It's just like the test, therefore, of like whether you're a coalition partner, it just seems to mean very little. That there's no like necessary entailment from it. There's no like you should treat them bad necessarily. There's no you shouldn't work with them necessarily. There's no, and so I'm just like, well, then what is left of this whole "are you a member of the coalition" thing? I don't even understand that. Therefore, like, why does it matter that you are or not? It just mean like me, like I like you or you don't like them. Like I don't understand what's left of this coalition thing.
When I say coalition, I mean anti-MAGA, anti-Republican Party coalition, a coalition that is focused primarily on taking power from Republicans. And so if I'm confronted with a leftist or any other person who is only interested in boosting candidates that they personally like and will take actions and will take actions that materially help.
I'm going to rewind a little bit. I was on the phone.
To imagine endorsing or supporting somebody who wouldn't endorse or support the Democratic candidate unless he was meaningfully better than the Republican alternative. So that's what you mean. Like your even now your support for Manchin depends on him still being an ally to the Democratic Party if he were running for office, right? If electing Joe Manchin, for example, if he was just going to caucus with Republicans this time as an independent, then you probably wouldn't waste your time.
Correct.
Yeah, no, I understand all that. I'm not saying that it would be irrational for Hutch to behave that way or even to argue like, fuck.
No, you can't say you understand all that when you're going down a line of questioning indetermination of trying to break apart his logic of consistency. You can't say you understand that if you're trying to do what you're doing as a debate tactic.
We're going to need more conservative Democrats in given places. I'm not saying that I even disagree with that. It's just like the test, therefore, of like whether you're a coalition partner, it just seems to mean very little. That there's no like necessary entailment from it. There's no like you should treat them bad necessarily. There's no you shouldn't work with them necessarily. There's no, and so I'm just like, well, then what is left?
That's a terrible point, Pisco. Oh my goodness, that's not a good point. I'll just let him continue.
To this whole "are you a member of the coalition" thing, I don't even understand that. Therefore, like, why does it matter that you are or not? It just mean like me, like I like you or you don't like them. Like I don't understand what's left of this coalition thing.
When I say coalition, I mean anti-MAGA, anti-Republican Party coalition, a coalition that is focused primarily on taking power from Republicans. And so if I'm confronted with a leftist or any other person who is only interested in boosting candidates that they personally like and will take actions and will take actions that materially help Republicans.
No. Again, Pisco tried to do that little snake shit that he did by throwing in like Manchin to, again, insinuate a level of inconsistency. If the determination of voting for Manchin was antithetical to, or at the very least, combating a Republican candidate, it's clear that yes, you and everybody here would say vote for Joe Manchin. The difference is the lefty would go out of their way advocating for Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin doesn't win the primary, then they don't tell people to vote for the primary candidate that has been chosen against the Republican candidate. Again, this is not analogous. And you're being very petty. fuck's sake.
Republicans in some races because maybe the Democrat, they don't actually like them, then they are opposition, right? I don't understand how they're not political opposition.
If by definition you're defining opposition to mean someone who would
Helps
refuse,
Republicans.
if that's the definition of opposition, then they're trivially opposition. You've just defined opposition as
Oh no.
They're wrong. All that colorful language or hyperbole if you want, but I find that
Democrats as well. So I'm not going to say that it's just never going to be my primary focus. And again, for me, the line is a coalition, particularly if that man.
recall briefly looking into it in a cursory way. It certainly does. I'm just saying it doesn't seem that there's much significance to this label opposition. If
they could surprise me, that's fine. Or they could do the thing that like
Where
Emma
was
Bigland
I?
did. She's like a really good example.
Hard to imagine endorsing or supporting somebody who wouldn't endorse or support the personally, but that I could no longer in good conscience support him as a
Socialisty, more kind of like move.
I'm just like, well, then what is left of this whole "are you a member of the coalition" thing? I don't even know, understand. Therefore, like, why does it matter that you are a party?
I guess I'm separating a coalition of like voters and a coalition. They wouldn't be my opposition if they were on the same page as me, though. That's my point. You're not my opposition if you're like a Marxist-Leninist who, you know, maybe your ultimate goal is like a socialist revolution. But if you're on the same page about helping to elect Democrats because you think that helps your goal, then sure, we can be on the same team for that election cycle. And I disagree that that's going to lead to a socialist revolution. So I'm not that concerned about it.
Sure. Then it just feels like the vanguard on that view, or at least Zach from the vanguard, would like
And we'll
mention,
take actions and we'll take actions that materially help Republicans in some races because maybe the Democrat, they don't actually like them. Then they are opposition, right? I don't understand how they're not political opposition.
if by definition you're defining opposition to mean someone who would
Helps
refuse,
Republicans.
if that's the definition of opposition, then they're trivially opposition. You've just defined opposition in such a way.
Trivial.
But I mean, when I say
How's
trivial,
that trivial? That's the whole game, right?
when I say trivial, I'm using it as a term of art to mean the definition you provided. You're just stating facts that conclude the definition with respect to these different actors. And so when you ask, wouldn't that obviously be oppositional? Well, yeah, if you define opposition that way, trivial in the sense that all you've done is you've looked at the language of the definition and you just set out those facts about a hypothetical person. And so I have to grant you on your terminology that they would be opposition. That's what I mean. It's not
I
like
don't think well, I would consider them opposition because they are opposing my political goals.
like Joe Manchin was.
There could be narrow instances or narrow examples of him opposing my goals. So he was, in my opinion, if that's true that he didn't endorse Kamala, then in 2024 I would consider him opposition.
Right. But then I'm like, well, then what is the significance of being labeled opposition? If you're labeled opposition and not part of the political coalition, but someone like you, who I think is very based in harm reduction, and you really do want to see the country better off, and not in the hands of like this fascist threat, you're willing to work with the opposition when it suits your interest. And when you think, and
Again, there's a very significant difference between choosing two candidates versus aligning yourself with people that destroy or deteriorate the Democratic reputation from their own rhetoric. Like, these are not the same. I think Pisco understands this. I don't know why he can't figure this out.
even think that
They
like this is
wouldn't be
something we
my
should model.
opposition if they were on the same page as me, though. That's my point. You're not my opposition if you're like a Marxist-Leninist who, you know, maybe your ultimate goal is like a socialist revolution. But if you're on the same page about helping to elect Democrats because you think that helps your goal, then sure, we can be on the same team for that election cycle. And I disagree that that's going to lead to a socialist revolution. So I'm not that concerned about it.
Sure. Then it just feels like the vanguard on that view, or at least Zach from the vanguard, would be part of the coalition, and Joe Manchin would not in 2024. That's not how you act.
No, I think they're opposition. And like, I think that we're touching on something a little bit different here. Like there's a couple things. So they say that they'll support whoever the nominee is in 2028. I just frankly don't believe them. So they could surprise me. That's fine. Or they could do the thing that like Emma Bigland did. She's like a really good example of someone who, you know, endorsed Kamala Harris, told her followers that they should vote for Kamala Harris. And at the same time,
And Pisco keeps on using this Joe Manchin point to prove inconsistency, and I think it's very petty because Hutch just learned this fact pattern. So to utilize his behavior from the past as a means to prove that he's a hypocrite is ridiculous. He didn't realize this, and he just now realized this, and then the moment he did realize this, he condemned the action. Like, come on, Pisco, this is petty.
she was like undercutting Kamala rhetorically along the way in a way that I think like
As was
discourses
Manchin.
turnout.
Well, I don't know if Manchin has as much. Are you suggesting that Vanguard has more influence than Manchin, and that Manchin wasn't also saying things that like she's not competent, she's not vote? It does feel like
No, I'm not saying that they had.
Oh. It feels like Manchin.
I'm not saying that they're.
I'm not trying to interrupt you. I think it's a lie. I really am not trying to interrupt you.
It seems like you're going for like a gotcha with Manchin, but if Manchin is opposed to helping every Democrat,
You're 100%. This is the disingenuous Pisco debate guy, and it's annoying when he does this shit. He said, "No, I'm not." Yes, you are. You keep on bringing up Joe Manchin to insinuate inconsistency. You are doing the debate thing. Now, I love it when you do it against MAGA. That's the hypocrite in me. But it's definitely a debate thing right now.
Right on the ticket in 2028, then he's my opposition, right?
No, we can just put Manchin to the side. I think the point I'm trying to illustrate is I don't actually disagree with you saying, well, we have to work with Manchin in certain cases, or people like Manchin, even when they are obstinate because
then stop
of the
bringing
reality
it
of the
up.
situation. But and so like there, not much fight with me on that. It just means that like the significance of being labeled opposition just simply seems to be, did you endorse or not? And there's no additional entailment from that of like how you should treat them. There's like way more facts that need to be known before any other kind of like entailment, by which I mean any kind of necessary response emerges.
I just don't come to the same conclusion. I think you're trying to simplify it to that, but that's just not the case. I think Hutch has announced several times it is how it's more than that. But I'll let Hutch explain it.
And in fact, it might even be smart sometimes to bring in people who maybe were opposition or who moonlight in opposition to your side and treat them very, very well. And so that's what I'm trying to say is not that
nobody's
your responses to Manchin don't ever make sense, but that the Manchin example shows that this term, not part of the coalition, not part of our group, not part of or part of the opposition, doesn't have a lot of weight.
I'm guessing after Pisco got destroyed about the Kulinski point, he looked up Joe Manchin.
Well, I'm trying to use this. Yeah, go ahead, Josiah.
Just real quick, there's a chatter there, and he raises a good point, but I think it cites it needs some clarity here. So he says, Manchin helps a coalition in a way a politician is supposed to by voting with Democrats. Hasan is a pundit. He did not help the way that a pundit is supposed to. And my only quibble there is the timeline that Pisco is referring to, Manchin was no longer in office.
He was a sitting senator,
I think. That would be like a separate...
Wait, when did his term expire? Was it January 2025?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. So he was a lame duck senator, not seeking re-election, but he was technically in office. And he was
fucking up in office. He was like not voting. He was like not voting for Democrats nominees either. He was fucking shit up in the Senate. He was doing a bunch of that shit too. So like, and also senators can wear different hats. Like, I don't think he was operating as like a senator in that sense with respect to like the legislation when he goes on fucking shows to talk shit about Kamala, which he did.
Right. And so I understand, I take the point, but I think that I disagree. I guess ultimately I think that Manchin did have an obligation to endorse Kamala Harris. I think the expectation needs to be the same. I think it's possible, because I think Pisco himself would agree with this. You would rather have a Democratic-aligned Joe Manchin in West Virginia than a Republican. So there he has utility to the Democratic Party, but also as a thought leader in the anti-Trump coalition, he also had an obligation to endorse Kamala Harris and did not.
One quick thing. I think, unfortunately, there's something very uncomfortable about what we're discovering now with this Manchin example, which is it is an undeniable fact that Hasan signaled more that he was going to vote for Kamala than Manchin. And if that's the only thing that we're assessing on whether you're in opposition or not, then unfortunately, just based on the empirical evidence and the tests you provided, Manchin in 2024 was more opposition than Hasan Biden.
I mean, I could even grant you that, and I don't understand how it undercuts my thinking at all.
Well, I'm not saying that it necessarily does. I'm just saying it doesn't seem.
No, that's why you brought up the Hasan thing. You did do it. Like, Pisco always tries to do this. Oh, that's not you. That is what you're doing. It is 100% what you're doing. And I would disagree. I don't know enough about Joe Manchin, so I don't know if I agree or disagree. So, Mike, I have no opinion.
There's much significance to this label opposition if it doesn't really reflect how we're going to view a person, what we're going to do with the person, and whether or not that person should be like welcomed back. There's other stuff. And so there's just the opposition label, the coalition, it's a red herring. It's just being used as a synonym for did you endorse or not, but there's not any other necessary entailment or prescription that comes after that.
There's other things that come beyond just like an endorsement. Like the second order thing that I would focus on is like a good faith analysis. I mean good faith by like both in the sense that I know that this person is going to do what they can to just to not like lie and deceive, but also I know that this like commentator or pundit or whoever, this is someone that I can rely on to be rigorous in their fact checking and make sure that they're taking steps on their end to be like reliable sources of information. And that's where I think people like Vanguard and unfortunately Kyle Kulinski to a lesser degree are not rigorous in the stuff that they report on their channels. They will see stuff that pops up on their. You were watching the Kyle Kulinski video and you saw that he was like amplifying like a CCP propagandist to make a point about the Democratic Party. I can't even remember what the specific point was. That to me, I think is extremely destructive because yeah.
It was more like it wasn't for its factual component. It was for like the analysis. And yeah, I saw the account. I'm like, this, they should probably like, before they put some, unless they're specific, like this is a viewer thing, or this is what people are saying on Twitter as like a segment or something. And again, unfortunately, the video didn't provide enough context for me to assess whether it was responsible or not. And that's one of the failures of the video, is to give a foundation for why any given instance of look at Twitter bros, that it was irresponsible, because there can be uses of Twitter as news. Zaya, for example, will often, as part of his segments, look to the response on Twitter. It just is a fact that it is part of the commentary, because people who are important are talking on Twitter, or maybe even not important, just have an interesting view. And so I think there's more to show that specific usage was irresponsible. But on your substantive point, I'm fine. Like, there are definitely things that would distinguish Manchin, Hasan, Vanguard, all these people, all right, in many different ways that are, you would have to be a fool not to think about. And I understand that. But I think that we need to get over this implicit opposition coalition language and say, well, the reason you shouldn't hang out with Hasan, the reason you shouldn't hang out with the Vanguard isn't because they refuse to endorse, they didn't endorse strenuously enough. It's because they're liars. It's because the balance of their coverage is this. It's because there's a way higher standard for a pundit than an elected politician. And like, let's get to the meat of the basis of the prescriptions and not just do the simplistic on-off switch of coalition.
Well, I feel like this has come up a lot, and maybe I'm not articulating myself well. I'm not even being insincere. Like, it's possible. My chat just introduced me to a Reddit thread where they were unpacking how I can be bad with my language sometimes, or inarticulate, but
I understood his points pretty clearly. I don't know. It's hard to gauge whether or not this is Pisco being in good faith or him simply not understanding. I don't know.
I've never told you, and I've never told Josiah, and I've never told anyone else, like, do not talk to Vanguard, do not talk to Kyle, do not talk to Crystal or Emma. I don't even care. Like, it's not even my preference that you be just like outwardly hostile towards these people all the time. My only thing that I'm asking of people is to just push back in the particularly egregious cases and highlight the absurd claims that are thrown around very flippantly in those circles. Like the claim that Josh Shapiro covered up a murder.
I think it's ridiculous.
Absurd. And it just,
I think it's ridiculous. And I will talk to him about it. Yeah.
But the problem with that, Pisco, is
should have talked to
that
him
took
when
me
you were
about
talking
fucking
to
2
him.
minutes.
That's the fucking point.
2 to 4 minutes of Google searching to get information about, like, and all you need to know about why that's absurd is, like, who is the one that gets to decide if a death is reclassified from a self-unaliving to a homicide? It's not the governor. It's like the coroner or whatever. It's like the local,
he was AG.
one of the local.
He was AG at the time, but
no, but the AG doesn't have the power to.
I'm just saying. I'm just correcting on the fact that it was when he was AG is when they're alleging the malfeasance. But I agree with you on the disposition.
Did I say governor? Yeah.
No worries. I just want to make sure people. I think that you knew that. I wanted. That's why I'm not correcting you to be an asshole. I'm just saying it because
I mean, he was AG at the time. I misspoke. But like that example is so bad. It implies a level of recklessness that, like, I think if you do what we do for a living, you should have some fucking pride in your work. Okay. Like, I think you have a responsibility to your audience who look to you as a reliable source of information to do everything in your power to make sure that the things that you're saying are accurate. And everyone's going to make mistakes. Everyone is going to get the facts wrong on this or that thing. I'm not demanding perfection. I am demanding, as a reasonable standard, that you do a cursory fucking Google search. When you hear a claim like Josh Shapiro covered up a murder,
here's the thing, Hutch.
Google it, bro.
I agree. I agree with that. But I want to push back on Timothy Douglas in the chat. It says, Pisco, no, not I will talk to them later. One of the reasons why I said I wanted to talk to them later is because I recall briefly looking into it in a cursory way during the conversations about VP, but I wasn't prepared in the moment to even know the name of the girl who was stabbed so many times and the facts of it. And one of the things that I don't want to do in any given situation is initiate a pushback when I'm not confident that I will be able to do so effectively. And so one of the reasons why I said we can talk about that later is because I was fairly convinced that I'm actually quite convinced that it's not the case. And I remember doing a cursory look, but in the moment, I wasn't confident in my ability to recite them. And there's nothing wrong. You guys took it, and I think Timothy Douglas took it as like, oh, he's running away from disagreement in that moment. What I wanted to do was me do my due diligence and not to initiate a conversation where they could potentially run laps around me and I would fail in my duty. So what I did.
Okay, that's fair. I'm glad he articulated that, because I don't try to argue things that I'm not familiar with. What I do try to say is I say clarifying statements to ensure that I'm not complicit with the rhetoric that I have an intuition that is probably false, because you can kind of like understand when things are very hyperbolic. So typically I would probably go like, I'm not so sure about that. I'm going to look into that, but I don't know if that's true or not. And then maybe even asking clarifying questions to see how they understand that. That way you have enough fact patterns to look up. The fact that you said nothing does make it sound like you're complicit, or at the very least don't care enough. So that is my suggestion. If someone says something that is outrageous or hyperbolic or ridiculous or misinformation, and you can kind of consider it as so, either ask follow-up questions to get all the details so you can look it up later, and also make it seem like, I don't know if I agree to that. That doesn't sound right to me. I'm gonna look it up.
I think responsible. I don't think people should have an issue with it. Is to say, hey, like, let's focus on this other part. We can talk about that later. And when I go and talk to them about it, I will sound way smarter, and I will be able to be more convincing to them and their audience than in that moment if I just did it off the cuff and like, wait a second, this isn't even true to, and doing this on the fly, which can be very difficult sometimes and make you look bad. And so, but everyone was shouting at me like, how could you just let that stand? How could you just let that? And to do it effectively, you need to actually be prepared.
So I think that's reasonable. I mean, Josiah, you've been quiet for a little bit. I'm wondering if you have some thoughts here.
Well, I just saw a new Piers Morgan panel with Ethan Klein on it. It's the first time.
What?
Benny Johnson talking about Don Lemon. It's going to be Glenn Beck, Benny Johnson, Ethan Klein talking about Don Lemon, the Epstein files, and some what. So that's going to be interesting. I mean, look, I guess I just don't have a particular dog in this. I didn't see Pisco's conversation with the Vanguard. My position is, as far as the coalition goes, and I go right back where I started. If you have a stated preference for the Democratic Party over the Republican Party, I consider you in my coalition, particularly if that manifests in a call to action to vote. The reason I would consider the Vanguard more coalition adjacent than Hasan is because, based on my understanding, Hasan never did anything. He doesn't say, not only did he not give a call to action to vote for Kamala Harris, as far as I'm aware, but in the clips that I've seen, like Hutch provide, like there was one where I guess he was in Minneapolis, and he just gave the asinine comment that this would have happened under a Democratic administration. Like, that's just incredibly reductive and irresponsible. I don't think the Vanguard would say something like that. If they did, they would be objectively wrong. I know that Kyle, I use Kyle as the example, while Hutch had us deafened, Kyle dropped the ball in 2016. He dropped the ball in 2020. He picked the ball back up in 2023, right before Gaza, then dropped it again. And I don't think he ever explicitly endorsed Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. But my grace for Kyle has come for what he has said since then, which is that
I prefer more like singing type music. I don't know what you would call that, but I like music where they sing the souls out. That's what I like. And I like anime openings. I like rock music too. I like rap and hip hop,
right,
of course.
And he would vote for Joe Manchin over any Republican. He would go out and vote for Joe Manchin over any Republican. And so I'm willing to show him some grace there. Now, if Kyle Kulinski drops the ball again in 2028 and just says, you know what, both sides are the same, or I'm not endorsing or supporting, then that's the end of our bridge. I could still be friendly to him, but that'd be the end of our political coalition.
I just want to say, like, I think that Josiah's summary there is fine. I totally agree that for me, the more relevant thing is like now. That's why I treat Richard Hanania differently than I treat someone like Rob Noor, who I treat very differently than someone like
or Liz Cheney.
Liz
Cheney.
There's skills here, but I have no problem on specific issues like contradicting or calling out Kyle. Unfortunately, sometimes when I want to do that, it might be something that some libs don't like. So, for example, I just saw him today on the Epstein files make all sorts of, in my opinion, what I feel are wild extrapolations in terms of the certainty of knowledge. Even though he gives this kind of statement, we don't know that all these specific allegations are true about Trump on some things. He, without any qualification or equivocation, says that we know for sure that Trump is a rapist with respect to children. He knows for certain that
Alex Preddy was the victim of a targeted assassination.
He says that too. I think that, and he doesn't caveat the way he should. I don't think that's responsible. I don't think that's right. But and I would talk to him about that stuff. The thing is, like, I understand that, and I understand that there are good criticisms that can be made of him, of me, of Crystal, of all these, of Josiah, all that shit. At the end of the day, for me, they are disagreements. They are disagreements, and they might, in fact, be discrete. Maybe they're broader in the sense of like who this person is and their continuing coverage of events. But what I'm interested in is like, what is the so what? English teachers ask, so what? So what to your essay? What is like the call to action? What is the thing that I'm not doing that I ought do?
These are disagreements. These are not disagreements. These are factual inaccuracies. I think disagreements is very, very charitable language.
And where's the best example of that so that I can understand why so many people seem to raise this, like, you're bootlicking for tankies, come into tanky yourself. These people are not part of the coalition. Where is the thing that I'm not doing or that I am doing where I either should do it or should refrain from doing it?
My answer to that question is to be more confrontational, just generally, just to be more confrontational when in the face of some of these. You said not responsible. I will say reckless. I think Kyle is just reckless. I think he's been reckless throughout his entire career, and I think he's just a reckless kind of person that does not seem to do. I mean, I feel like he was different because I'm told that he used to put sources in the description of his videos, and now that just doesn't happen anymore. And so I'm told, I didn't follow his career closely, but I'm told that he used to be better in that respect. But and in the particular case with Vanguard and the Shapiro thing, I think that's reasonable if you're not keyed in on the facts. Like that happens all the time when you have conversations with like insane conspiracy theory people like Rob North, for example. Yeah. Like he can go on a fucking 30-minute rant about like really.
But I'm more familiar with those facts usually. And I saw a comment from Timothy Douglas again in the chat was like, well, you wouldn't do that for MAGA. Usually because I spend more time covering MAGA, I like know about the Burisma stuff. I know about it, the different allegations about Alvin Bragg and this and that. And so I'm able to like almost magically in front of the audience's eyes, I have the capability because I'm just more well-read, but it actually does take a lot of facts to contradict some of the conspiracies. And on the left, I just spend less time on that than I do on the right. And then maybe that's what I should do more is spend more time on conspiracy on the left, but I just don't know in virtue of what should I. Like, I feel like I should spend most of my time on the MAGA stuff because that's like my primary enemy.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I'm not going to spend. I mean, I shouldn't say not spend because there are times on Twitter and in my YouTube videos where I'll call out, people on the left or even Democrats as well. So I'm not going to say that it's just never going to be my primary focus. And again, for me, the line is, that's just me. Do you prefer the Democrats to the Republicans? Will you urge your people to vote for Democrats over the Republicans? So now let's say that you have a commentator who says, yes, I recognize that the Democrats on their worst day are better than the Republicans on their best day, but I'm not going to encourage my chat to vote for them. Then I would say I would probably leave myself open to engaging with them, but I don't think I would consider them part of the coalition. So let's say Zach and Gavin from the Vanguard come out and they say, Josiah, which I don't even know if I consider them part of the coalition anyway. I haven't really thought about this, but I like the guys and they've been friendly with me. We've had some heated back and forth. Zach in particular, he and I have gone back and forth on when they've had me on their show 2 or 3 times. But let's say they come to me and they say, Josiah, listen, we recognize empirically the Democratic Party is better than the Republican Party, but we're not going to encourage our audience to vote for Democrats in 2028. And then I would probably say, well, listen, we can still be buddies or whatever. I'll test your, check your polls from time to time, but we're not part of the same coalition. And so I'm going to spend less time, trying to do outreach or whatever. That's how I look at it. It's got to be a stated preference, and it's got to be a call to action to vote for the Democrats when push come to shove. And that goes for Kyle too. If Kyle, reneges on it like he did in 2016, 2020, 2024, that would be the end of, you would see a lot less Kyle content on my channel, a lot less me covering Kyle in very flattering lights when he goes on.
100%. And there's tons of proof of this because like if Kyle was talking like Cenk Uygur, you don't think that we would be calling him out? I take whenever I see something like negative, like Cenk Uygur doing a false equivalence, he did it the other day where he even said that Biden opened the border or something, like they weren't enforcing the border, and that was madness. And that's part of the uniparty shit. Like it was the most stupid fucking thing there's ever been. And if he was talking like that, making a false equivalence or in that kind of respect, I would be calling that out. And
I mean, for me, when it comes down to it, I'm fine with like you're not on my side, but if you push like correct messaging, I'm willing to praise you. But I think making that distinction that these guys have their own self-interest and they push lies doesn't even have to be like a coalition thing. I don't think I'm too interested in that. I'm more interested in whether or not you're telling the truth or you're telling lies. That's all I care about. And are you helping the fight against MAGA? Right now, that's all I care about.
I don't think I'll let you talk much. I'm sorry. Timothy Douglas says, treat a leftist saying Shapiro covered up murder the same way you treated MAGA saying it. And that's not like, we'll have a conversation about it later. Do Willikers, I guess I'll talk to you about it later. If I say something like, you guys are fucking liars, this is so wrong, whatever, and they call me on it in that moment, and I like don't have the best command of the facts in that moment, like, do you understand that if I write a check that I can't cash and they call me on it, it looks fucking horrible, and you look like an idiot saying that if I'm not confident in the moment to have that discussion, that I should anyway, or to have a strong position and be like, yeah, well, I know you're wrong, and I just don't remember. Like, this is so stupid. Obviously, the right thing in that context is to say, I don't agree with you. I think that's wrong. Let's talk about it later. And
did you say I don't agree with you though? Did you say that? Did you emphasize that? Did you?
Unfortunately, you're saying no. I had to have known all of those facts. I had to have known to debate it in that moment. And even if I didn't, I should have like puffed up my chest and say, I know it, so that they can just call me on it and I can look like a fucking idiot. That's what you would do, Timothy, because you are an idiot. Sorry, Hutch, go ahead.
Well, I also say, I'm sorry, real quick, as a chat, and not to give one guy, I understand what they're saying. I just disagree with it. People are saying that Cenk and Kyle are the same. I don't think even Hutch would say that. I mean, Kyle's gone after Cenk nonstop. Since Cenk started his like MAGA diplomacy thing. I mean, one of the worst ass beatings we've seen in like alternative media was the conversation that Cenk had with Crystal on Breaking Points like I think right before Trump was inaugurated or shortly thereafter. Like I do think there's a meaningful difference between Kyle and Crystal's commentary and what Cenk is doing. I mean, Cenk is talking about breaking bread with MAGA, and he's he has all the negatives associated with Crystal and Kyle, and I think very little by way of the positives. Like Hutch, would you agree that you think
Cenk is worse? I mean, I would say Cenk is worse, but I would push back against the idea that Kyle doesn't do false equivalencies with the Democrats and Republicans. I just watched a video just like a week and a half ago where in the video, in no uncertain terms, basically described the Democratic Party, while they're the minority, by the way, as Republican light. I mean, you can call that colorful language or hyperbole if you want, but I find that to be extremely destructive. And I know I brought it up in our conversation, Pisco, but I'll bring it up again here with Josiah because I don't know if he saw that. It was a couple weeks ago. I just pulled up, I'll check in with Kyle's videos like once every couple weeks on stream. So I just pulled up the first video that I saw where he was talking about the Democratic Party. And in that video, he made a claim, speaking of the recklessness that we were talking about before, that Gavin Newsom vetoed a single payer bill in California. That might not seem to be like a big deal on the surface, but I think there's more to that kind of rhetoric than meets the eye. Because I think Kyle is in that moment, he is basically telling his audience that Gavin Newsom committed a cardinal sin. When you look at the priorities of Kyle Kulinski's political wing of the last like 10, 15 years, it's been Medicare for all, single payer healthcare. That's been like the number one goal for their movement. And so to say that a bill to give everyone in California single payer healthcare landed on Biden's desk and he vetoed it, I think he's actually communicating something deeper with that. And I think he is signaling that like he would not vote for Newsom in 2028. And I think he is. You guys surely would agree.
I will
that
ask
Newsom,
him.
as it stands
I
now,
will
has
ask
a
him,
pretty
yes.
decent chance of
Yes.
winning the nomination, right? So
I will
I think
ask
it's really
him.
bad for someone with a
Why don't you just condemn
audience
it?
size that large to be telling people information like that is just simply not
You will
true.
ask
I don't
him.
understand that, Hutch, because on the one hand, I'll ask him that. By the way, if he answers yes to that, people, half the audience, as they did with the Vanguard, when I asked them the very same thing, they will say, I don't believe him. Do you believe him? Do you believe him? And like, so they can't win in that respect because they'll just say, well, come on. He just says that as a self-serve.
Why are you defending them? Why are you automatically approaching the idea that he's going to deny it? He already said this. He already said the claim. What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean you're going to ask him? Hutch already said that he said the claim. Just look up the clip. You want to defend him is what it sounds like.
Statement, and you have to look at the balance of the coverage. He's doing material harm, whatever you want to say about that. But I will ask him the question the next time I talk to him. But number two,
Just look
with
up the
respect
clip.
to
Why do you need to ask him?
the other statements that Kyle has made, where he has said, I would like walk through nails to vote for Joe Manchin at this point. You don't think that would apply to Gavin Newsom, or you think that he was being insincere in that moment when he does regularly say stuff like that? And I understand, I saw in the video that you showed me that he referred to Republican light in the context, I think, of a Cory Booker statement on Israel or something. And so I don't know if it was the same, it's as broad as you're trying to make it, but regardless, he makes the statements that I would like do anything to vote for Joe Manchin, like given how different they are in this context. And so why don't you credit
I think we judge people by their actions, and I know how he's been for his whole career in terms of his political strategy. Just the fact that he's saying that it's going to be different now, that's not enough for me. Like, honestly, we have a good test coming up in the midterms, like, will we see him suggest to his audience members that they support more moderate candidates, like that? If we see that, then great, I'll welcome that. And if he does do that, then, he will have like built goodwill for me, and I'll be inclined to believe that he'll do the same in the future. But that's not going to change the fact that I think that people like Kyle and people like Emma, I think is like the worst example of like
Emma endorsed Kamala.
But Emma Vigland is just like, when we talk about the flowchart meme, it's like a literal meme with her. Like, I don't know if you've watched, I watch like a decent amount of Majority Report stuff, and it's like comical. We'll do like bets with the chat, like how long until she makes this thing that Trump did about the Democratic Party. And it's just a matter of time. It happens like basically every fucking time. And so for me, it's like, that's the basement of whether or not I would consider someone to be like on the same side is, are you willing to endorse a policy or electoral strategy of straight to
Which
to
Emma
Democrat?
meets more than Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin talks a lot of shit about Democrats all the time too, and he did back when he was senator.
So listen,
That's all Pisco has is just to bring up Joe Manchin, huh? To do his little gotchas. Joe Manchin. At this point, I don't believe. I'm going to have to treat him like MAGA. I don't believe his interpretation of Joe Manchin. I just don't believe it.
Party's crazy. My party's insane. Everyone on my party's insane. I think they're totally out to sea on everything. Like, Manchin would constantly shit on Democrats every single second.
We're not talking about. I'm trying to compare the standard.
Talking about pundits. Okay, I know that there's a different standard. You're saying you're applying a higher standard for pundits.
Manchin was also instrumental in getting all of Joe Biden's.
I understand that. I'm not clear. I understand that. I'm not disagreeing with that.
You don't understand it. You keep on fucking bringing up his name. Stop saying you understand it. Pissing me off, bro.
all I'm just trying to say is on purely the metric of coalition or not coalition, I consider Emma Vigeland way closer than Joe Manchin's conduct. And that's including, I understand that Joe Manchin was essential for Biden's policies in a way that Emma Vigeland was not. But on the specific question of political alignment and the standards that you put forth, I don't even think it's close.
It's like the Soviet Union and the United States in World War II. I view it that way, where it's like after the election, we're in a kind of a Cold War situation with people like Emma Vigeland. But I'll take the help. I'll take the help during elections. But I think it's extremely destructive. I want to let you speak, Josiah, but I just want to give you like an assessment of like, here's where I view people like Emma, Kyle, Hasan, and Vanguard. I think all of them have a philosophy that can be summarized as, they represent a silent majority of people in this country that are actually super far lefty, but they just don't know it yet. And they think that the Democratic Party, one of the primary functions of the Democratic Party is to prevent them from taking power. And so their main priority is changing like the Democratic Party fundamentally, which there's nothing wrong with that goal in itself. Like everybody kind of has that goal when you're doing political engagement. Okay, that's fine. But they serve up this narrative, this constant narrative that they're the victims of like the Democratic establishment boot. And if only the Democratic establishment would just get out of the way, then all of us would have healthcare and, we would all like just be fucking super tight and get along and it would be great. And that I think like I totally disagree with them.
Yeah, but that's a substantive like disagreement though. Like what about that?
I think they're wrong. I mean, I just think they're wrong about like their assessment of where the voters are at. I think they're wrong about the merits of like their political movement. I think like it's kind of destructive the way that they do it. It's like better than MAGA in terms of like the destruction done, but I think that they are selling a kind of vision of America that I don't think is.
Can we walk through it, Hutch? Because like I am actually not sure that there's that much disagreement on policy between you and majority report. So number one, you're in favor of some version.
I'm gonna hit the road here real quick. So I just want to say, I just two quick questions just like popped into mind. I can't even remember the first one. First one was again, I take your point about Joe Manchin as long as he's serving, in a lawmaking capacity where he coalitions with the Democrats. Now that he's out of office, obviously he has no congressional utility. So to the extent that Joe Manchin doesn't endorse Democrats and shit talks Democrats, you agree that Joe Manchin in 2026 is not part of the coalition, but that he was in 2024 as a sitting member of Congress. Now Joe Manchin, because you mentioned he was instrumental when he was a member of Congress.
No.
Now
Hutch granted that he wasn't. Hutch granted that he wasn't part of the coalition, but he could distinguish how he treats them based on their instrumentality of his effectiveness.
No, but he said something earlier about Joe Manchin was instrumental, and he was in a lot of Biden legislation, but that doesn't give him a pass. Right, but that doesn't give him a pass for forever, is what I'm saying, right?
Right, but he wasn't a part of the coalition then. Like on the grounds of coalitionness, he was not in the coalition. He may have been more useful for other reasons, and maybe he would have treated him differently. But on the grounds of is he part of my side or is he opposition, he was more opposition than Hasan Piker was. That's what Hutch said.
No. Here, but I think we can address this in a different way. If Emma Vigeland announced a run for a district and she was competitive in a red district, I would endorse her and tell my people to vote for her. And the same kind of thing applies to
super easy to understand.
Even though she's in opposition.
Yeah, I
actually don't think that she would qualify for opposition. Right. So then this opposition thing is like she literally has a seat at the table. Like, the opposition literally has a seat at the table on your view.
Well, the congressional majorities, I think, are like a separate kind of like.
Why the fuck does Pisco? Pisco's so bad faith right now. It's ridiculous. Why does he not understand the difference between supporting a candidate that is going up against a MAGA versus condemning people that are not going into election that are pushing bad rhetoric? Like, why doesn't he understand that? What is the problem with Pisco? I don't know, man. I don't know.
Higher order issue, though.
It seems whenever we're trying to get clarity on the rule, the rule changes and becomes like.
Well, that's why
that's
why I was asking, because I took his point to say whether or not Manchin was part of the coalition when he was a senator is irrelevant because he had instrumentality as a voting member of the Democratic coalition.
Facts.
Joe Manchin's not in office now, so now you would agree that he's less useful and is even less part of the coalition than Emma Vigeland because now he's not voting for anything and he's shit talking Democrats.
Yeah. In the context of 2024, Emma was a stronger
Josiah understood
than Joe Manchin.
Pisco's being an asshole.
And then the second question is about Kyle. And the false equivalences and stuff like that. And yeah, to the extent that he's calling Cory Booker MAGA light. Now, maybe there's a discrete issue where Cory is not far away from a particular MAGA position. I'd need to know the context. But what do you make of? Like, I remember.
Can we just say Schumer went out and said part of my job as leader is to make sure Israel is funded. And do you think it's like a bad criticism of like some Democrats that they're basically shades of Republicans?
That they're MAGA like just because they support Israel? Are you fucking kidding me, Pisco? Is your brain that dense when it comes to Israel? Are we serious? Come on, bro.
And when it comes to Israel policy, is that like even wrong?
it's not inaccurate to say that there are a lot of Democrats and Republicans that agree that the United States should provide for Israel's
Right, so it
security.
doesn't even feel like that's an inaccurate statement. If it was made of Cory Booker that he's Republican light on Israel, it feels like it's true.
I was talking in a more broad sense. He, like, I can't give you particulars, but in a more broad sense, I think he does regularly kind of conflate the entire Democratic Party with Republicans.
So my last question is, and again, getting back to Kyle about the false equivalence thing, what do you make of when Democrats do well, like electorally? Kyle cheerleads that. Kyle like takes fucking victory laps and he hypes the Democrats up. Like, do you remember? Because it went viral after the November 2025 election where there was a blue wave. He lit up that cigar, had his shades on, and was like hyping up the Dems and shit talking the Republicans and stuff like that. Like,
but if I were to go to his Twitter account and search for, you know, Mikey Sherrill or Abigail Spanberger, I don't know what I'll find, but I would not be shocked if he was calling them, I don't know, pro-Israel, like pro-Zionist. I don't know. Whatever.
What if that's true? What if that's true though?
Well, no, I mean, like, that's one particular issue, but I'm saying, like, it wouldn't shock me if I found a lot of tweets of him, like, cutting them down the size.
Well, well, again, I don't know. I don't have time to unpack this here because, again, my line isn't, does he criticize Democrats? I don't give a fuck. I'm fine if he criticizes Democrats as long as he criticizes
No, I'm okay with criticizing, but there's criticizing and then they're saying that Gavin Newsom vetoed single payer. There's a big universal difference between those
if
things.
he said that, if he said that which is factually untrue, I totally agree. It's a separate thing. You said cutting Abigail Spanberger down to size, and to me, I don't give a fuck. I don't need him to.
You cut down Plattner. You cut down Plattner, and if Plattner won, I bet you would be cheering against Susan Collins, and you wouldn't really. If someone came, oh come on, Hutch, you cut down Plattner to size, like you would be like, oh, who cares? I can do that.
But he'll cut them down in the general. That's my point. There's a huge difference between attacking Democrats that are in the primaries still and the Democrats that are in the general. And that's not even to say that you can't or shouldn't criticize Democrats that are in the general. But when the criticisms are based on things that are just like simply not true, and if it's a constant kind of push of a larger narrative of there being this big bad evil establishment that is, you know, seeking to squash like any and all like progressive movement in this country, which I find fucking ridiculous, then I think that it's a larger.
It's not about the fact of problem. So it's not about the fact of criticism. It's about whether the criticism is factual and not in service of some larger narrative that I think hurts the that's
not only the Democratic
that's going to be
Party,
turtles all the way down. If it's about some larger narrative that you think hurts the Democratic Party, they just take a different view. They think it helps them.
This is all about.
I know, but they feel
I think they're wrong though. I think they're wrong.
Well, Pisco, you also think they're wrong. Come on, bro. Come on.
Let me just close the loop on this and I'll peace out. I was not surprised when Kyle did that because I guess, you know, not that I watch all of Kyle's videos, I just don't have the time for it. But I'm familiar enough with his content and Crystal's content and conversations I've had with them privately and when they've been on my channel. They celebrate. They actively celebrate. They just don't note it clinically and move on. I think they're more celebratory, for example, than the majority report, than either Sam or Emma. When the Democrats kick Republican asses, they are hyped about it, especially Kyle. Kyle, much more so even Crystal, he treats it like team sport, lighting that cigar, shit talking to Republicans, hyping up the Democrats. As long as he does that, like, that guy's part of my coalition. So that's what I say. So listen, bro, appreciate it. This was supposed to only be 30 minutes. This is why I don't stream with you guys anymore.
You fucking love it, bro.
I do. No, I do. Yeah. I do. Like I said, I kept texting, like, give me another 30 minutes. Give me another 30 minutes. Give me 45 minutes and stuff like that. It's fun. It's fun. Even when we're circling the drain, it really is. I just don't know how you guys sit on your ass and do this for 8 to 10 hours a day. I don't know how you do it. Like, my back is sore. My head is sore. Like, it's a discipline. It really is. Like, you know how when Hasan, was it Hasan who said, talked about how hard streaming was or whatever, and he got a lot of shit for it? Was that Hasan?
Yeah, it was.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
I don't even think what he said on paper was like that bad, but it's the way that he framed it that I think.
No, I agree.
Like, his point about your social battery being drained is like not even controversial. I think that is for sure a thing.
Yeah, I genuinely don't know. Like, the way my channel works, like when I do like recording stuff, like it's very rarely even like, you know, 3 in a row. Like, it's usually 1 and then I'm doing research on another one. So there are like breaks and shit in between. I genuinely could not do it. You guys are super.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it.
Yeah. Love the game. Listen,
it was really good talking to you. Yeah, I had really. I'm glad you came by. This is great. I think we should do it more often.
Yeah. We should start a podcast with like
problem.
only liberals and then we can have guests and stuff every week.
But we should get a Convoy back too and start like a Live and Learn knockoff, a Live and Learn cover band. So
we did Live Learn Love or whatever that one was. Live Laugh Love.
Remember we did that. Live Laugh Love because we need laughter. All right, no, listen guys, it's fun. Talk to you later. Bye. Thank you.
I was going down a place, Hutch, but I'll give you. I've been talking a lot, so I'll let you.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I think that you're actually. I think you're closer to Emma than I think. I think that your issues with them are with respect to their emphasis, with respect to their the slant of the reporting with some of their like views from like or almost like bird's eye view about how the structure of power works, and certainly within the Democratic Party. But if you were to go policy by policy, like I think you would be more aligned with Majority Report than you are with like a lot of centrist Democrats. I think that you would be in favor of
I'm sure there would be policy disagreements because they really like rent control, for example. And my understanding is that basically every economist, left wing and right wing, thinks that rent control is bad. And so I think they're more closed off to market solutions. I think both of them are probably anti-capitalist. Probably Emily more than Sam. I think she is like anti-capitalist. I think she does envision a more kind of socialistic structure. But I'll give you a good example of like where I really depart from Emma, and like where there's like a wide cavern between us. Which I watched their coverage on election night in November.
I'll be honest. Most of the difference of opinion really just comes Israel-Palestine. Israel-Palestine. I wonder if the Israel-Palestine issue wasn't a thing. I wonder if how politics would be. Like if Hamas didn't do what they did.
Was it sad? I thought Emma cried. Was like very upset.
She didn't cry.
I thought
their coverage on election night in November.
Was it sad? I thought Emma cried. Was like very upset.
She didn't cry, but like, so when I was covering the election, I was telling my chat going into it, I'm not going to be satisfied unless this is a really dominant victory. And then what ended up happening was that it was even more dominant than I thought it was going to be. Like,
are you talking about 2025 or 2024?
2025. Just this last November.
So
Yeah. Maybe I didn't specify the year, but so the vibes on my stream, bro, we were dancing. We were like, holy fucking shit. Like the Republicans are fucked. Like we were euphoric. The vibes were immaculate. And then I tuned over to the Majority Report's coverage, and that was like straight up depressing. Because what was happening was there were early reports coming in that Mikey Sherrill and Spanberger's margins were exceeding expectations. And she was legitimately pissed off that people were talking about that. And she was undercutting the idea that their victories were notable. Like they were watching the news, and the news was reporting on what was happening. And so there was this narrative kind of emerging that Mamdani was maybe underperforming a little bit relative to expectations. Obviously what he did was crazy impressive, and I've really liked what I've seen from him so far as governor or mayor. But the other part was that Spanberger and Sherrill were looking like they were, especially I think Sherrill in New Jersey. I think she especially really overperformed because I think that race was projected to be a little bit closer.
That was very impressive. Yeah.
And so when they were watching the news coverage of it live on their stream, and she was saying stuff like, the newscaster would say that it sure looks like they're overperforming, and then she would say stuff like, no, they're not. Like she was so invested in that moment in minimizing the wins of the so-called moderates and trying to inflate the win of the progressive. So that to me is like the big difference between me and her, is because I think she's invested in the Democratic Party in a way that is like exclusively focused on reshaping the party into a more progressive like structure. I think that is like her number one priority. Or
here's my commitment to you. I will watch that election coverage, and I'll examine it, and I'll do a vibe analysis, and I will be honest about it. I will see if the vibes are off, because I think that there's a point to be made there. If you're kind of,
I'm skeptical, but whatever.
Poo-pooing Democratic victories, places you don't want, it could be a little bit of a vibe terrorist action. I don't know, even if that's true, what do I make of that? Like what do I make of that?
The narrative, the establishment, the big bad establishment, they serve capital, and they want to prevent progress. That's their narrative.
Oh, but I grant that that's their narrative then.
Yeah. And so anytime establishment candidates come, or quote unquote establishment candidate, I mean, it's a very nebulous term, but come along, she will kind of nip at their heels.
Okay.
That to me is like where there's a big disconnect between me and her, because I think, obviously money has an influence in politics, and obviously big donors generally don't prefer like more leftist type candidates. So it's not that there's no merit to that, but I think that the reason why the progressive movement hasn't caught more steam in this country is because of their own failings, largely because of their own failings, their own sort of misperception about where the public is at. And they blame the establishment for their electoral mediocrity in the previous.
Yeah, I've heard you say this before, and I'm not saying that it isn't, that there isn't an element of like the onus is on the candidate to appeal. I just I don't understand how you reconcile that with your position for people who want to focus on the failures of Kamala, so their particular failure. But like where, the response to you, and I actually find this sometimes often slimy when you're like, was it a mistake not to vote for endorse Kamala? Was it a mistake for this? Or like, I actually find it very annoying when they want that question and they try to deflect. So I'm with you there. But why, if that's your view on the failures of the progressive movement, or is there a double standard? I'll just ask you, why do you treat it differently? If someone says, they didn't treat us fairly, we had all these disadvantages. If your response is just, well, your candidate failed, but that doesn't really address whether or not what they're saying is true, and it's not something you would tolerate if they try to change the subject on you in the context of Kamala, and they say, well, Kamala was a bad candidate. The onus is on her to appeal to the population. You can't blame the entire world for your troubles and on influencers. I actually do resent it when they do that pivot. Why is it not the same kind of thing?
I actually think that this is like a make-believe thing that's just simply not true, because when Hillary Clinton lost, for example, there was endless intra-party commentary / debate about all the granular reasons for
I think it's universally said that Kamala was a bad candidate. So I don't know where Pisco is getting that rhetoric from. I'm not gonna lie.
for her loss, including her campaign failures. Chief among them being ignoring the Rust Belt states. That was like the big one that people were talking about at the time. When Kamala Harris lost, there was nonstop discussions within liberal spaces about all the ways that she could have run a better campaign. And there's like a few top line issues that we've talked about a lot. We don't need to get into those. So I actually see like robust post-mortem analyses of prominent liberal, of elections for like prominent liberal candidates that fail. And I do see a willingness to dive into the crosstabs and really try to unpack like all the ways that the campaign could have connected with voters a little bit better. And you just don't see that with progressives, like basically ever. Can you think of a single high-profile progressive loss where that happened with progressives? Like there was an intra-progressive kind of conversation about how could we have met the voters more, or how could we have connected with them more? You never hear that. All you hear is AIPAC, donors, establishment, rigged. And it sounds a lot like MAGA to me. And I think that people like Emma and that whole space, like they constantly play into that. So I just philosophically, like really profoundly disagree with them, just prescriptively about like what are the problems. Like, and so that motivates like a lot of my thinking about viewing them as like allies or not. Like I think if you're only interested in helping to elect progressives, I don't think you're really an ally. Like I think you should be willing to tell your audience, obviously, Joe Manchin, if you live in West Virginia, obviously you should vote for it. I think they're unwilling to do that for the most part, to like fully commit.
Well, I'm not sure how many opportunities have arisen, except in the primary context, for them to discuss the shortcomings of their candidate, because their candidate hasn't been selected in the last 3 cycles. You had Clinton wasn't the preferred candidate, Biden wasn't the preferred candidate, probably wasn't your preferred candidate either. I think wasn't my preferred candidate.
No, but what did they say about like Bernie's loss
in the primary? What I'm trying to say is there is a willingness on behalf of the left to look at the crosstabs when it comes to the general election. In the primary contest for the national candidates, I agree. They have these narratives about Bernie that he was cheated in 2016 and he was cheated in 2020. In 2024, you have this odd situation where Biden drops out. We basically just have these two. The sample size is of 2. Sample size is what happened in 2016, where there was the DNC putting thumb on the scale, but it wasn't what I consider to be quote unquote rigging the primary. I want to grant that though. You also have the structural component there of super delegates that gave Hillary Clinton almost like a fait accompli feeling. That might not be quote unquote rigging it. Yeah, but it is an element of a perceived unfairness. Okay. And so I think that 2016 is like an area where you don't have to grant the rigging. But you can understand why it's like, it's not, let's look at all the crosstabs, because like there's a lot of shit that was happening there in 2016 that makes a kind of like unwillingness to check the crosstabs. It doesn't strike me quite as much, but I'll let you respond to that and then go to 2020.
Yeah, I mean, the very existence of super delegates is fucking crazy. And I know they made big changes after 2016 and they have way less influence now. First of all, wait a second. Is Ryan Getty in the chat?
Well,
you guys, is he here?
He's not in mine.
Somebody was saying you got to let Ryan Getty in the call. I would love to have him come in.
Yeah, sure.
I think he probably takes more of your view on this, but like the super delegates, all that, like that's valid, and that is like unfair and undemocratic in my opinion. I'm glad they made changes. I would just as soon get rid of super delegates. I think it's kind of crazy and just technocratic in a way that turns people off. It makes people think like, oh, you think the voters are so stupid that you need this failsafe, which may or may not even be true. Like I'm not even taking a position on that, but it just looks like bad. And then obviously there were other issues in 2016 as well. Obviously the DNC had a preference for Hillary, but the nuance there, Pisco, my brother, who I love.
My enemy. Did you see the title of my stream? My enemy.
No, I did not. The nuance there is that the emails that were hacked by Russia and then laundered to WikiLeaks, who then were parroted by Donald Trump like over 100 times when he was stumping in the final like 30 days of that election, were all dated from April and beyond. And at that point, the media was very invested in playing up a horse race kind of narrative because it drove ratings. But at that point, every credible pollster understood full well that Bernie had no path to victory.
In the general?
So I think in the primary against Hillary, because he decided he decided he was going to stay until the convention. I think he dropped out shortly before the convention, but his thinking was he was going to do that to pressure her to move on policy.
Hutch, I'm just going to grant you. We need to go into this. Like, I grant you, Hillary Clinton was the favorite of the voting Democratic.
And it wasn't because of the DNC.
And I don't
not win because of the DNC.
Now,
that's not why.
I think sometimes it's hard to disentangle. Like, is the effect of inevitability causing people because they want to vote for someone who is more well known or someone who they perceive to be a winner?
Bone thugs are also
is that playing on it? But like, I feel like that is just baked into every election that it's very hard to disentangle. And so I'm not going to count that. I'm not saying that it shows that they're correct.
Bernie struggled with black voters a lot in 2016 and in 2020. And you cannot win a Democratic primary without the support of black voters or where the support that he had. He also struggled with older voters. That's a really important block because they vote in larger numbers than the younger people. Those two things are the most crucial points of analysis when it comes to his losses in both 2016 and 2020. And you never heard any of these like progressive populist left-wing social media pundits ever address that. Like, it never came up. It was only the DNC rat fuck Bernie in 2016 and then Amy and Pete rat fuck Bernie in 2020. They never talked about like the concrete reasons why he actually lost.
I hear, and I think that's the failing. And I do find it annoying that there's constant like victim attitude among certain people on the left. I totally agree with that. And I think it's of certain libs as well, where there are people like the FBI rat fucked Hillary when they did, right? Comey rat fucked Hillary Clinton, but Hillary had other problems in her campaign and a myopic focus on,
again, a false equivalency, because the general sentiment is that people do not defend Hillary Clinton. You're talking about the generalized notion, especially from liberal content creators. So stop using these equivalencies, because we're talking about the big political commentators that actually make this rhetoric. How many people would defend Hillary Clinton like this? Not many.
Well, the FBI screwed her, and when they did, right, like that can cause you not to realize certain things. So I'm not denying that in the recent primaries, 2016, 2020, 2024, you cannot at all, like, that is just you cannot extrapolate from that for 2024. But the recent ones, there has been a failure among some people on the left to look at their Bernie's own problems related to messaging. Who else?
It's all of them. All of the progressive candidates, Katie Porter, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, all of them. They all always explain their losses because
of money, AIPAC, and money.
The establishment, So they frame the Democratic Party as an evil institution trying to suppress the true will of the people. That's their grand narrative that they spin.
I think they have the view that money has a corrupting influence on elections. And in certain of these situations, for example, in the Jamal Bowman primary, the introduction of AIPAC money, which they view as illegitimate and illegal and shouldn't be done, or at least at a very bare minimum immoral, that they view that as having a corrupting influence and as a kind of an external factor, an exogenous factor coming into the election that somehow taints it. But
so does the Democratic Party. So does the Democratic Party that's been in their platform for the last 3 presidential cycles to pass a constitutional amendment to end Citizens United. So it's not that they have a view that, it's not that they're wrong that they have a view that money has a corrupt influence in politics. That's not the issue. The problem is they entirely blame external forces for their losses. And they frame it as the Democratic Party itself corruptly rigging elections against them to block them from actually delivering for the American people. It's this grievance-based victimhood kind of framing that I think is not only wrong, but really
I can be bought, but I need to be bought with more.
I think the 2016 primaries with the Democratic Party is one of the most destructive things that's happened to our politics. It's probably the second most destructive thing behind Trump.
Listen,
in terms of the culture that it fostered.
I didn't support Jamal Bowman in the primary. I don't really like Jamal Bowman that much at all. But I want you to deal with the strongest version of the argument. The strongest version of the argument, for example, in that one is the following. They didn't like Jamal Bowman's stance on Israel, and they flooded all of this money from AIPAC. AIPAC money is illegitimate. It shouldn't exist. It's wrong. And because they had this money in, they were able to manipulate voters. They were able to have a huge leg up in a race, and it was fundamentally unfair because of that. Now,
if that's
to rebut that, you have to be like, well, either your argument is, well, legally they're allowed to do it, in which case you're not addressing what they're saying, right? Because they're not saying it's illegal. Okay. Or you have to say, well, no, it's not unfair for some people to have more money than you. It's not unfair for outside. Okay, go first, sir.
That wouldn't be my argument either. The argument that I would make was that Jamal Bowman was down like 16 points before AIPAC spent a dime in that race. And that when you actually talk to the voters of his district, the number one reason that they didn't like him, well, there were two reasons. Number one, he voted against the infrastructure bill. And number two, he did the fucking alarm shenanigans in Congress. Shit, yeah. And he behaved like a clown and got caught
that's true.
And lied about it.
If that's true, that's a pretty good argument. Yeah. I'm not even saying, I'm just telling you, like, they might not know that, right? They might just be stupid on that.
I'm good. Pisco is being much more good faith now. Shout out Pisco. I like some of the questions Pisco is asking, and I wonder. We'll see how this conversation ends, but that was a very good point. And the idea that they're just stupid doesn't really hit because these are political commentators that can affect people's thinking.
Well, that's a different problem then.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Like, the people can be like stupid with respect to a given topic. Like they didn't know that, right? Or now, if you introduce them like, I still don't care. I still think that this is a determining factor. Or they could say something like this. Well, notwithstanding the lead, I still think the AIPAC money was dispositive. We would have been able to turn things around if X, Y, Z. That I think is a little bit more whatever.
Yes,
but
I'm eating raw ramen.
Making the argument that, well, you would have lost anyway is maybe something to say that the election was legitimate. But it doesn't get to the heart of what they're talking about with the AIPAC money, you know, which is that this kind of shit makes it impossible for us to know at the end of the day. Now, I don't actually even agree with that. I think AIPAC should be, and organizations like AIPAC should be protected under the First Amendment for certain kinds of their speech and shit. And I don't even think that you call those elections illegitimate. Biden had a lot of money from different places. So I think that calling something illegitimate invokes other things. But all I'm trying to say it is, you are construing this as like this malicious attitude among people on Majority Report and among people in these different leftist spaces to refuse to acknowledge their own shortcomings. And maybe sometimes it is, but they also, on some of it, I'm not saying all of it, on some of it, there just is a different view about the legitimacy of certain institutions, certain practices, super delegates, AIPAC money, this kind of shit that I think that we need to contend with. And I think that what you said right there, that's a good response. Like it didn't really have an effect.
We could apply that logic to MAGA though, right?
Sure. Yeah.
It's the same logic. I mean, they just have a different view, right? You could phrase it that way. I mean, I would phrase MAGA as being partisan to the point of like cult status. You know, their partisanship
I see what you're getting
to
at.
the point where
this is what I mean.
So
right? Like, no, I understand. Your point is basically like you can't just claim ignorance because you treat some people who could plausibly claim ignorance or plausibly claim different values poorly.
I'm saying their cup is full. Like they're not open to this information because in service of the grand narrative. I keep referring to this grand narrative, but I think it's really important in understanding how they operate. Like that is the thing that is above everything else. Is like they're this oppressed, suppressed, corruptly suppressed political movement in this country that would set the country free and unburden us from the stress of poverty or no healthcare and blah 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 blah. If only these evil institutions would just take their boots off of our neck. And you can't pierce that. In my experience, it's very difficult to pierce that and to get through to that. They will violently reject any other information because it's so reinforced with social media echo chambers, which is another part of this conversation that I think is making hyperpolarization, hyperpartisanship way worse in this country.
Is the kind of groupthink and association.
And if I felt, and I've had conversations where I felt like in that moment, my determination was like, I think maybe there's an opening here that I can be persuasive. And in those moments, I take a kind of different tone, but
his comparison from the far left to being this kind of like monolith of ideas, being very similar to MAGA and not willing to accept reality is super poignant. It's true. And whether they want to believe that or not, because some of them do note that MAGA is a fascist, evil regime, which is true, there needs to be a level of self-reflection in understanding that there's a lot of similarities from the far left in particular, not overall left. And those people who have this kind of monolith ideas of everybody's corrupt, everybody's racist, everybody's X, Y, and Z also doesn't help the issue and doesn't really create a better society and doesn't really help you win elections and doesn't really help push policy and doesn't even create solutions. So very good point by Hutch.
For the people whose cup is really full and you're just never going to move them away from this, I think what I want is more people visibly attacking that premise because I think that premise has bled into the mainstream.
Okay, but that
springs from all that and it bleeds into the mainstream, which I find to be very destructive to our body politic.
I want to address both things. The first is the MAGA comparison one, because I think it's a decent point. I do in fact treat certain MAGA people who I think are more volitional and knowing with respect to their distortions, like for example Trump, who I think oftentimes is knowing, Miller, all these people as way worse than the people who are just put the wool over their eyes. That's one of the bases I have to distinguish between the MAGA Colin who says, I think they stole it. I think they stole it versus the people who I know should know better. So I do treat them differently in that respect. But the kind of point that I'm driving at is a lot of this could be described as this kind of like malicious failure to recognize or just like conscious disregard of like facts in front of them in a way that I would feel is like very bad. Part of it is just a values question. On Israel Gaza, for example, their whole outlook on that is just so informed by their moral position on Israel Gaza that in light of that view, right, a lot of what they say still like makes sense on that view. Like if you take the view that they do, that for example, Biden with just a phone call simply but immediately set things in Israel and Gaza the way he wanted to.
And if you take the view that the entire government is filled up with a deep state that is controlling you and lying to you and is super corrupt, then you could understand why you would want Donald Trump to do what he do. If you take the view that all immigrants are super evil and that they're destroying America, then you can understand their viewpoint. These are just not realities. These are not situations that can be interpreted in like what is actually going on. Now, to be charitable, there's a much clearer reality here to attach yourself to with the Israel-Palestine stuff, because Palestinians are dying, civilians are dying, and the history is super complicated, so there's no clear good or evil, bad or good on either sides. So that gray can provide much more interpretation, but ultimately just like perceiving morals through their lens is not a good enough way to kind of diagnose reality.
If you take the view that Gaza is undergoing a heinous Holocaust, right? If you take that view, their conduct in response to Biden makes sense, right? That makes sense.
I don't think it does, though.
Why?
I don't because I don't think that.
I think the response here is not necessarily that their reality is warped, but their reality doesn't take into consideration the grander vision of ultimate evil. If they live in this kind of moral space where they're determining value from the human lens, then you can't say what Trump provides is in the best interest of humanity as a whole, especially if you understand what his positions are.
That moral framework is coherent or consistent. It's utterly incoherent to me. We're getting new reports. It seems like by the month, there's a new independent organization coming along and giving their own estimate of how many people are going to die because of the USAID cuts. And all of them consistently place the number between 10 and 15 million people. 1/3 of those people are kids. So if this is about like, I can't support Kamala Harris because she supported
that's not,
genocide.
that's not what I'm talking about. I don't think that makes sense on that view. And I agree with that. Mm-hmm. That not voting for Kamala doesn't make sense on that view. I totally agree with that. What I'm saying is the kind of coverage, the Democrats supported this shit. Democrats are partially responsible for this. Biden is responsible. He's Genocide Joe. Like, I agree that the voting there, that there should be a principal harm reduction that cuts across the specific views there. But the coverage issue, why are you making it such a focus of your coverage? That kind of stuff is explained by that worldview. And it's not necessarily attributed to just say Democrats, just say Democrats, just say Democrats. That might be a part of the associations. And yeah, that's all I'm saying there. Now, some people, I think, are like that. And they are just America bad, Democrats bad, we hate power, and we just always want to be like, I don't know, on the outs, commenting and being Walter and whatever the other Muppet guy is and throwing peanuts. There are some people who cherish that role and for whom obtaining power, it's almost like Heath Ledger's Joker, right? I'm just a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do with it if I caught it. Like they're immune to power and they don't really want it because they don't want the awesome responsibility it takes. They'd prefer to be on the sidelines. So it runs the gamut. So, yeah.
I don't think it's so much that is, I think they view political power within our liberal framework as inherently corrupt. And so why would they want their preferred candidates to be in a position of power? Because that would mean that they were necessarily corrupt. So you see them, like, I'm not saying all of them are doing it, but you can see a lot of like decently large lefty accounts are fully distancing themselves from and criticize and condemning Mamdani because he's actually like ascending to power in a way that is really quite impressive.
Those people are people where I'm like, now I'm seeing more indicia of that kind of like black pilly, eternally on the outs, fringe people who just, there's almost a fetishization of being on the margin, of being a dissident. And in some cases, some of those, and I will grant you, some of these people have been the best artists, the best thinkers, have given useful insights before in the past, who have that kind of view. So I don't think that if you have that fetish, that you're necessarily, everything you say is useless. But I do recognize that there are such kinds of people, those dead enders. I don't think that necessarily should affect how we conduct our conduct, in that, like, if we're convinced that these people are marginal, because as Mamdani goes up, they get more angry at Mamdani. I don't think that it should be a basis for us to disengage with lefties or to treat them horribly who are not part of
I don't want you. Wait. Hold on. We're getting.
So what is the entailment? What is the prescription? What do you want?
You can be so nice to these people. Just like Josiah, I think is, or I think Econoboy might be a better example of this. Like Econoboy is like dispositionally very nice. And like usually I've only seen him like really kind of go demon mode a couple of times. But apart from that, he seems like a very courteous person who will avoid falling into the trappings of like ad hominems and just going full ham. Like then I would put like Josiah a little bit above him, and then I would put you and me a little bit above Josiah because we're more willing to kind of just like go fucking for the jugular. But if you don't have to be mean to people. You don't have to go out of your way to try to like humiliate them or embarrass them or mock them. You can be so nice and so civil and still like confront some of these structural problems that I think exist in the progressive left right now. Like, I think we need to start getting at identifying what those problems are and like really like calling it out, because I think those problems, as I said a moment ago, have bled into the mainstream. Like we can say small beans, lefties, you know, whatever, but I do think that collectively all of their audiences really do influence the way that normies like view politics. And I think a lot of normies have bought into their narrative of this, and that feeds like the current wave of populism, which, you know, I think it's a bad sign.
This might be more controversial then, because and I don't know. Tell me why I'm so much more frustrated with Chuck Schumer than Kyle Kulinski. Tell me why. Why is that? I genuinely feel it, and I hope you think about
more frustrated. Are you though? Because he fucking
am.
He hates Chuck Schumer with the fire of 1,000 suns.
No. I'm saying as between there's people on the left that you can be frustrated with, right? You can be frustrated because the lefties are bleeding in with their whatever the thing that you just said was. Yeah. I am just so much more angry and frustrated with people like Chuck Schumer, Fetterman, people who voted for the some of these measures, some of the people who voted for the Lincoln Riley Act. I'm so much infinitely more angry at them than people like Kyle Kulinski. Tell me why. Is it because I'm a socialist now? I'm not. Is it because, like, what is it?
It's because they have power. And what they're doing with that power is not meeting your standard of what is called for in this moment. But I think the way that we engage and talk about politicians is going to be a totally different framework than how we talk about like the broad discourse in this country.
It is very different. I understand frustration, but when it comes down to politicians, there's so many factors to determine in terms of their decision making that it's not as clear on like what their intent is. There might be some individuals that have like a interpersonal relationship with some of the policies that they advocate for, that it's on a moral grounds that you can probably deem evil, right? But sometimes there's so many calculations and so many factors a part of the variables here that it could be my base, the people that vote for me or chose me, they want this, so I'm doing this. It could be I need to stay in power, so in order for this to happen, I need to do this. It could be I need to compromise, so I'm going to negotiate, and even though I don't agree with this, in order for me to get this that's in the best interest of the people, I need to do this. There's so many more calculations that you have to understand the broader picture on why things are being done. When it comes down to political pundits and political commentators, it's very clear that these are actions and these are things that they're saying based off their own personal beliefs and their moral framework. So you can much clearly understand their intent on why they're doing what they're doing. So although I understand being upset against your politicians, it's oftentimes much more nuanced than simply just having like evil rhetoric, like compared to like MAGA. Like MAGA, we understand it's like, I hate immigrants. They are all pieces of shit. I don't want more immigrants. I don't give a fuck about the climate, so I'm going to drill. I'm like anti-abortion. I love tax cuts because I love helping rich people. Like you can understand their intent from a mile away. When it comes to Democrats, it's much more nuanced, which is why people are hating them so much. But there's so many different people who want different things that don't understand how things work. And so that's why you should give more credence to some of these politicians.
So like, I'm more frustrated with like, obviously like Donald Trump and our politics.
Sure, yeah, no, obviously like
politics more broadly than like left wingers or whatever. But
yeah, no, grant that.
You and me can directly engage in the online punditry space in ways that we don't have ready access to a lot of these politicians. So we've talked to some politicians, but I mean, you and me, we can just like directly, literally just like, in the case of you, have a direct conversation with Kyle or engage with them on social media or whatever. So there's just much more access there. So I think there's more room for us to make a difference in this way. And I think that is in service of a larger goal of like being more productive in the way that we exert influence on the Democratic Party. Like, I want to eliminate this idea of it shouldn't even come into anyone's thought process of like, well, you know, like you should not be leveraging your vote in the general for concessions. That's fucking insane. It is a suicide pact. It's insane. And like, take a look at Biden. Like, he was able to be pressured from the left flank while he was in office. Like, you have so much more opportunity to pressure politicians to adopt this or that policy position once they're in office. But this idea of like, if you don't adopt my particular policies on this, and this issue, I'm going to help Republicans win. That is so destructive.
No, I
think we need to be like really aggressive.
No,
about,
I definitely, but that's why like, I think that I'm not hearing that from the specific people that I'm interacting with. Because the specific people I'm interacting with, like when I interacted with Prime, I did hear it. And I think people saw how mad I got. When Ogre Boy and this other person were in my chat talking about how actually it makes logical sense to withhold your vote in a swing state versus in a safe state versus in a swing state, people see how fucking upset it makes me. It's just not the thing that I'm hearing from those people. Now, maybe if I were to ever speak with Hasan, I would hear that, and people will be able to judge how I will react to that for sure. So I hear you that the part of your analysis here is, well, we're more likely to have an influence on the influencer circle. This might be controversial as well. We're not going to end them. We have no power to, and they're going to have an audience, and we will not be able to diminish them. And the only thing we'll be able to do is make our own content and try to appeal to them. Like, I don't know how we can destroy them, like, or make them irrelevant. How do we do that?
I don't think that's a realistic goal. Like, okay, I've never said we need to make sure that people like, you know, Hasan don't have a platform.
Okay, so
I don't think that's
this is the issue. I think that your goal could be accomplished by convincing people in their audience, perhaps.
But that's what I feel like I'm doing in my own way. That's what I feel like I am doing. That is my goal, is to peel away. I mean, I have people in my chat that say that they used to watch a lot of Hasan. And
here's my question for you: who do you think is more likely to peel away people from Hasan Vanguard community, you or me?
I truthfully can't answer that question. I really don't know.
And what basis do you have to say that your strategy is better than mine?
I don't know if I am making that argument, like in terms of like the specific, like how you attack those arguments. That matters less to me. But I also want to, this kind of reminds me of the conversation that I had when I was in Wick's panel last week, where I reject the idea that there's like a universal standard for how to like pull people away from certain communities. Like it might be the case that your method is more effective for like 75% of the people that we might pull away. And my method is more productive for like that 25%. But you and me are.
My position is anytime someone says something that's wrong, challenge it. That's all I care about. Someone says something that's wrong, challenge it. I don't care if they're on the left or the right. Challenge it.
We're going for the same thing, but we just have different tactics. And maybe these people that are convinced by me are not going to be convinced by you.
Then the thing is, you need me then. And it's not a case of,
I don't want to get rid of you.
That's what I mean. But then there's not a basis of criticism for what I do then. Because then it's like we're different strategies.
The only criticism that I have is that we need to be attacking that grand narrative more. Like, I think like if our goal is to beat Republicans and to get out of this like fascistic slide that we're in, and to make the Democratic Party better and empower them to do like better things and go further with legislation, then I think we should be talking about their grand narrative more and pushing back against it. We're not going to like kill their careers, but yeah, we can, I think, make a difference on the margins. And you know, who knows how paradigms change all the time, and maybe people will no longer find their stuff appealing in like 3 years because they're just sick of the bullshit. But yeah, and I have an appointment in a little bit, just so you know.
So before we end,
can I do some final thoughts?
Yeah,
go for it. Yeah.
Can we spend like last couple minutes? I can explain why I thought the conduit video wasn't good. And I want to, or do you want to say that for later and just give final thoughts?
I'm tempted to say that because I do want to spend some time unpacking that with you. I mean, I have like broad strokes that I want to say, but
okay, we'll save it.
Do you have time tomorrow to have a conversation?
Yes, we can talk about that, and I'll watch the majority report thing. Let me give you my final thoughts. I'll let you have the last word. I think that
Hey, interesting stream. Shout out Hutch. Shout out Pisco. I'll give it that. Do not dislike Pisco. But if his strategy to appeal to the voters works, I think this was a good conversation. Even though Pisco pissed me off with something, I think this was a good conversation. We'll see how that plays out. What about Bone Thugs? Someone talked about Bone Thugs. Is that a rap group? All right.